Good evening and welcome to our daily devotional reading. A special welcome to the members of our make-believe monastery, those who comment and or are subscribed. Let's turn inward. Let's try to connect with our bodies, with the tension in our shoulders, the beating of our heart, our bad postures. Try to hear what your body is saying. Try to feel the feelings that are bubbling up. For me, it's annoyance at this stage. For the teenagers downstairs, it's okay. Positive or negative, it's okay. Just feel. That is how we know we are alive. And with a sense of aliveness in the body, let's turn to Plato and try to remember this aliveness, because at least I thought this was quite a mindfuck that we're about to read. So hold on to your horses. Stranger. Then now, on the supposition that they are improved, let us ask them to state their views. And do you interpret them? Theaetetus agreed. Stranger. Let them say whether they would admit that there is such a thing as a mortal animal. Theaetetus. Of course they would. Stranger. And do they not acknowledge this to be a body having a soul? Theaetetus. Certainly they do. Stranger. Meaning to say that the soul is something which exists. Theaetetus. True. Stranger. And do they not say that one soul is just and another unjust, and that one soul is wise and another foolish? Theaetetus. Certainly. Stranger. And that the just and wise soul becomes just and wise by the possession of justice and wisdom, and the opposite under opposite circumstances. Theaetetus. Yes, they do. Stranger. But surely that which may be present or may be absent will be admitted by them to exist. Theaetetus. Certainly. Stranger. And allowing that justice, wisdom, and the other virtues and their opposites exist, as well as a soul in which they inhere, Do they affirm any of them to be visible and tangible, or are they all invisible? So I suppose we're asking this of the materialist. Dictators. They would say that hardly any of them are visible. Stranger. And would they say that they are corporal? Theaetetus. They would distinguish, the soul would be said by them to have a body, but as the other qualities of justice, wisdom, and the like, about which you ask, they would not venture either to deny their existence or to maintain that they were all corporal. Stranger. Verily, Theaetetus, I perceive a great improvement in them. The real earthmen, children of the dragon's teeth, would have been deterred by no shame at all, but would have obstinately asserted that nothing is which they are not able to squeeze in their hands. Theaetetus. That is pretty much their notion. Stranger. Let us push the question, for if they will admit that any, even the smallest particle of being is incorporeal, it is enough. They must then say that nature is which is common to both the corporal and incorporeal, and which they have in their mind's eye when they say of both of them that they are. Perhaps they may be in a difficulty if this is the case. There is a possibility that they may accept a notion of ours respecting the nature of being, having nothing of their own to offer. Theaetetus. What is the notion? Tell me, and we shall soon see. Stranger. My notion would be that anything which possesses any sort of power to affect another, or to be affected by another, if only for a single moment, however trifling the cause and however slight the effect, has real existence. And I hold that the definition of being is simply power. I could not access the Greek site, so alas, I could not verify the Greek, which is a pity because there's interesting terms here. Theaetetus. They accept your suggestion, having nothing better of their own to offer. Stranger. Very good. Perhaps we, as well as they, may one day change our minds. But for the present, this may be regarded as the understanding which is established with them. I'm just going to reread that. The established principle according to them. Understanding. The shared understanding. My notion would be that anything which possesses any sort of power to affect another, or to be affected by another, if only for a single moment, however small the cause and however slight the effect, has real existence. And I hold that the definition of being is simply power. Agreed. Stranger, let us now go to the friends of ideas. Of their opinions too you shall be the interpreter. Theaetetus, I will. Stranger. To them we say you would distinguish essence from generation, being from coming to be, the other translation says. Theaetetus, yes, they would reply. Stranger, and you would allow that we participate in generation with the body, coming to be, and through perception, but we participate with the soul through thought in true essence, true being. And essence you would affirm to be always the same and immutable, whereas generation or becoming varies. Theaetetus, yes, that is what we should affirm. We. Stranger, well, fair sirs, we say to them, what is this participation which you assert of both? Do you agree with our recent definition? Theaetetus, what definition? We said that being was an active or passive energy arising out of a certain power which proceeds from elements meeting with one another. Perhaps your ears, Theaetetus, may fail to catch their answer, which I recognize because I have been accustomed to hear it. Theaetetus, and what is their answer? Stranger, they deny the truth of what we were just now saying to the earth people about existence. What was that? Any power of doing or suffering being done to, in a degree however slight, was held by us to be a sufficient definition of being. True. Any power of doing or being done to, in a degree however slight, has held by us to be a sufficient definition of being. Stranger, they deny this and say that the power of doing or suffering is confined to becoming, and that neither power is applicable to being. Okay. Theaetetus, and is there not some truth in what they say? Stranger, yes, but our reply will be that we want to confirm from them more distinctly whether they further admit that the soul knows and that being or essence is known. There can be no doubt that they say so. Whether they further admit that the soul knows and that being or essence is known. The soul knows shit. Stranger. And is knowing and being known doing or suffering, or both? Or is the one doing and the other suffering? Or has neither any share in either? And is knowing and being known doing? or suffering, or both. Theaetetus, clearly neither has any share in either, for if they say anything else, they will contradict themselves. Stranger. I understand, but they will allow that if to know is active, then of course to be known is passive. And on this view, being, in so far as it is known, is acted upon by knowledge, and is therefore in motion, for that which is in a state of rest cannot be acted upon, as we affirm. True, stranger. And, O heavens, can we ever be made to believe that motion and life and soul and mind are not present with perfect being? Can we imagine that being is devoid of life and mind and exist in awful unmeaningness and everlasting fixture? Theaetetus, that would be a dreadful thing to admit, stranger. Stranger. But shall we say that has mind and not life? How is that possible? Or shall we say that both inhere in perfect being, but that is, it has no soul which contains them? And in what other way can it contain them? Or that being has mind and life and soul, but altogether endowed with soul remains absolutely unmoved? Theaetetus. All three suppositions appear to me to be irrational. Stranger. Under being, then, we must include motion, and which is moved, that which changes and change. Certainly. Theaetetus. Stranger. Then, Theaetetus, our inference is that if there is no motion, neither is there any mind anywhere, or about anything or belonging to anyone. Quite true. And yet this equally follows if we grant that all things are in motion. Upon this view too, mind has no existence. Theaetetus, how so? Stranger, do you think that sameness of condition and mode and subject could ever exist without a principle of rest? Certainly not. Can you see how without them mind could exist or come into existence anywhere? No. Stranger, and surely contend we must in every possible way against him who would annihilate knowledge and reason and mind, and yet venture to speak confidently about anything. And surely contend we must in every possible way against him who would annihilate knowledge and reason and mind, and yet ventures to speak confidently about anything. Theaetetus, yes, with all our might. Stranger. Then the philosopher who has the truest reverence for these qualities cannot possibly accept the notion of those who say that the whole is at rest, either as unity or in many forms, and he will be utterly deaf to those who assert universal motion. As children say entreatingly, "Give us both." So he will include both the unmovable, the movable and immovable in his definition of being and all. Theaetetus, most true. Stranger, and now do we seem to have gained a fair notion of being? Theaetetus, yes, truly. Stranger. Alas, Theaetetus, methinks that we are now only beginning to see the real difficulty of the inquiry into the nature of it. What do you mean? O my friend, do you not see that nothing can exceed our ignorance, and yet we fancy that we are saying something good? Theaetetus, I certainly thought that we were, and I do not at all understand how we never found out our desperate case. Stranger, reflect. After having made these admissions, may we not be justly asked the same questions which we ourselves were asking of those who said that all was hot and cold? What were they? Will you recall them to my mind? To be sure I will, and I will remind you of them by putting the same questions to you which I did to them. And then we shall get on. True. Would you not say that rest and motion are in the most entire opposition to one another? Of course, and yet you would say that both and either of them equally are? I should. And when you admit that both or either of them are, do you mean to say that both or either of them are in motion? Certainly not. Or do you wish to imply that they are both at rest when you say that they are? Of course not. Then you conceive of being as some third and distinct nature, under which rest and motion are alike included. And observing that they both participate in being, you declare that they are. I just spit on the mic. Truly, we seem to have an intimation that being is some third thing when we say that rest and motion are. Stranger, then being is not the combination of rest and motion, but something different from them. So it would appear. Being, then, according to its own nature, is neither in motion nor at rest. Theaetetus, that is very much the truth. Stranger, where then is a man to look for help, who would have any clear or fixed notion of being in his mind? Where then indeed, Theaetetus also says, where indeed is a man or a woman to look for help who would have any clear or fixed notion of being in her mind? Stranger, I scarcely think that he can look anywhere, for that which is not in motion must be at rest, and again, that which is not at rest must be in motion, but being is placed outside of both these classes. Is this possible? Theaetetus, utterly impossible. Stranger, here then is another thing which we ought to bear in mind. Theaetetus, what? When we were asked to what we were to assign the appellation of not being, we were in the greatest difficulty. Do you remember? To be sure. And thus far our scripture of the evening. I was reminded of this morning. I listened to another lecture of John Viveki on the Peterson Academy, and so much of what he said in that lecture was present in this reading tonight. Then I shouldn't be surprised anymore with all the synchronicities, but I constantly am. I do think that John probably grew up on this translation of Plato because there's so many of his words in it. Participation, for instance. So the body and soul dictonomies. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. It looks to me different when I see it spelled than when I hear it in my head. So I'm not sure how to say that. But the two opposites. We're dealing here constantly with two opposites. And we even started with two opposites because the stranger himself started dividing everything into two in the beginning to find a definition. John was speaking today about how Plato is actually saying that definitions are impossible. He's not speaking, the lecture series is not about, well, it's about the good. So obviously Plato is going to pop up quite a lot. And the good, he said, the only good that cannot be refuted is, sorry, I was distracted, is wisdom. He talked of earthborn men, those born from dragon's teeth, I think John Locke and David Hume, who want to be able to, who only believe in everything they can squeeze. And I must say there's a lot of that in me as well. I would not have flown all the way to Thunder Bay via Toronto to give him a hug if I did not also believe that I need to be able to squeeze something to know that it is real. I felt a lot, but while reading this, and not so much confusion actually as I was expecting, which was good because I listened yesterday, but I listened to it again today. On that channel of Alex O'Connor, more Alex O'Connor, he posts shorts, and he posted something yesterday about, is the meaning crisis really real, or something like that. That's not the words he used. And it ends with one of his interlocutors talking about something that I don't know the name of. I know I made a mental note that it sounds like Alex. It's something like alexithymia. Apparently we are growing more and more incapable of actually feeling. And that deadens us to life. And that, the interlocutor claims, is what causes this sense of meaninglessness. And he says specifically, he uses the words nihilism and pessimism. I do consider myself a nihilist, but I do not consider myself a pessimist. And it might be because I have contact with my feelings. And sometimes it's not fun. Like sometimes there's things you need to process, which is not so much fun to process. But I enjoy reading philosophy and feeling it more than thinking it. I'm probably going to make tonight's video extremely long because I feel like speaking tonight. What I didn't say yesterday at the evening, at the end, what I just commented on to the person who made the comment, just responded to the comment, that I should read the Bible. I explained my background in biblical knowledge, which is quite extensive. Amongst others, I taught, I hate this word in English, I love it in my own language. It's exegese in my own language, and exegesis, or something like that in English. And it sounds like exegesis, and I'm not that anti-religious. It was analyzing of biblical texts. And we used to, well, one of my classes, the more advanced students, because the further, it was the theology department, and usually, at least for the varsity that I was at, you start with about 15 to 20 people first year in theology, and by the end, when you reach like the 4th year, never mind the 6th year, you're down to 4 or 3 or something like that. And it was one of my advanced, I think, 4th years. They were already preaching. We had the lecture, the lectures in the library of the theology department, which is a round building, and there's a round table in the building, and we would sit around the round table, and I would read and analyze and then read again, and then we would discuss. And there were so many things that popped up that I would rather have discussed than just mentioned. So that I missed that. Oh, yes, feeling. But we did definitely feel into the text. The nice thing, I've already lost my faith by the time I was lecturing these, or doing these lectures. It's hardly capable of being called lectures. It was group analysis. But many of the students would then use the text as their sermon material for that particular week, that particular Sunday. And I remember one of the students, there were more, some of my students from the other classes also joined this particular class because it was really good. And not because of me, but because of the participation. And one of my students told me once that they could really feel the Holy Spirit present in the room when I was speaking. I did not know how to respond to that, of course, being someone of no faith. But honestly, sometimes I did also have chills as I was speaking. Later years, when I was communicating with someone, I thought that maybe it was indeed the Logos that was present, whatever that might be. I don't know. Or maybe it's just because I grew up in a home with lots of feeling and lots of opportunity to feel your feels and to express it. And I encourage that in my students. And of course, if you read the text with the idea that it is the Word of God that you are reading, you expect to be spoken to. And maybe I missed that tonight because I wrote also down what it made me feel of, like that passage that I read twice about being is the power to have an effect and to be affected. Maybe that is also something that we're missing in today's life, of isolation. To feel that we actually leave an imprint on others, and we can feel the imprint of others on ourselves. Knowing and being known, he talks about later. We don't really know. No, I shouldn't say it like that. I think that we can only know people who we can actually also squeeze. People into whose eyes you can actually look and they can look back into your eyes. People who don't only know you, but you know them, and the other way around. That is the only real impact. That is the only real effect. And if that is being, really being, then maybe the lack of that is what causes us to feel unreal, dead, without any motivation, without any inspiration. Let's not remain unmoved. Let's find those who move us in real life. And those who love being moved by us. May the spirit of Sophia be with you.